Welcome to OneTake. Today we're talking about the finale, the series finale of Succession. I'm Gil. I'm here with my brother Daniel. Say hello.
Oh, you screwed. I was gonna say, you screwed up my joke that I was gonna start off with. Usually, you let me introduce myself. I was gonna say I'm Kendall Roy. Sorry, I mean Jeremy Strong. I keep accidentally doing that.
Because you're so committed to your character. What I find confusing is that the actor's name is Jeremy Strong and the showrunner's
Jesse
name.
Armstrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But we watched the series finale. I've seen it twice now. And we haven't actually talked about it at all since we watched it. So I've been dying to find out, Daniel. I've been chomping at the bit. What did you think of the Succession series finale?
So basically, the finale's given me a weird problem, and that problem is I walk around constantly just wanting to scream "Ebba" really loudly. That was my favorite part of the finale.
Wake up, zombies!
Yeah, I want to see some bones. And then when he like jumps on the couch and just screams "Ebba," that is my dream to one day be a tall Swedish guy who can scream "Ebba."
So you've completely taken the wrong message from this show. Having a lot of money is bad. It won't make you happy.
That was the message?
So what did you think of the finale?
I thought the issue was they didn't have enough money, and that's why they're not happy.
Right, yeah, billionaire isn't enough.
All right, I thought the finale was, I want to say perfect. I have random complaints, so I can't say perfect, but like the spirit of it, like what they did, I think was perfect. I thought it was haunting, like chilling, and just perfect. I thought everything that happened was exactly what should happen, and I thought all of the acting was incredible. It was that final scene of the three Roys like fighting in that conference room with everyone else watching was just gut wrenching, and that scene I thought was like perfect.
Yeah, and I think needless to say, but of course, spoilers for the finale of Succession and all the previous episodes too. I completely agree. I thought it was the perfect ending for the show. I mean, what you want out of a series finale, especially, I mean, for any show that has any sort of overarching, however you say that, plot, you want to see it concluded. You want to see the themes concluded with some kind of final stamp. Of course, I loved the way Mark Mylod, the director of these last couple of episodes and one of the show's executive producers, the way he put it is that the lives of these characters will go on, but the part that we're interested in is over. And I completely agree with that. But on top of ending things in a conclusive and satisfying way, while still giving some signposts to how things might go for these characters in the future, which I think is kind of straddling the perfect line. On top of that, as a sort of bonus, the show found an organic way to almost be a greatest hits of all the stuff we love in this show. You get the siblings fighting. You also get a few scenes of them, some of those lighter moments that are pretty few and far between. You get Greg trying to bargain with some juicy information. We see Logan, he gets to come back in the finale, and we see a little bit of a different side of him. You get high-intensity vote and boardroom situations, which we love from this show. Those are basically the battle episodes from Lord of the Rings. Here it's a board vote.
You mean from Game of Thrones?
Yeah, Game of Thrones, yeah. But also, I mean, battle scenes, I guess, from the Lord of the Rings movies. Unexpected alliances and betrayals. Plus, unexpectedly, a lot of characters impersonating each other. You get Shiv and Rome doing their Kendall impersonation.
Why would you kill me? That's so not what you're supposed to do.
That is so totally not cool. And then you see Connor as Logan.
Yeah, I'm Logan as a teapot.
Yeah. So it was just on its own, in a vacuum, a great episode of Succession. And as the finale, I thought it just put a cap on things in the perfect way. So I think I'll just do sort of a run through of the plot and just interrupt me when you've got thoughts, and we'll highlight some of the most important aspects of the episode.
First, just something that's jumping out to me. Can we just put a death knell in the coffin? I always mess up that saying. But anyway, the death nail in the coffin of anyone who tries to argue that this show is a comedy.
Okay, you want to get right into that.
Okay, this show is hilarious, hysterical at times. But after seeing this ending, how could you say the genre of this show is a comedy?
Yeah.
It's so clearly a tragedy and a drama.
It's a
But in
cliche.
tragedy specifically.
Sometimes when a really good show or movie comes along, it's a cliche to say it's genre defying, which I think some of the best art is genre defying because it means you are just telling the story organically. You are following where you think the characters should go. Sometimes that means funny things will happen in your story. Sometimes that means terrible, awful things will happen. I think genre is useful in the context of trying to explain something to someone. Like if I want to tell you what Succession is or what Home Alone is.
Yeah, if you told me Succession was a comedy and I sat down to watch it, I'd be so mad at you.
Right.
Like thinking I'm sitting down for the same thing as Home Alone.
Exactly. So outside the context of trying to explain to a marketing person or to a friend what a show is, it's almost like, why do you have to classify it? Now, personally, I don't, if I think about in my brain where I slot Succession, I don't slot it in the comedy part of my brain. When I turn on the show, it's not because I want to laugh.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to laugh, and that's one of the appealing aspects, but it's because I want to know what's going to happen next. I want to know what choices the characters are going to make. Versus if I think of an Adam Sandler movie, Happy Gilmore, I turned it on expressly for the purpose of laughing. So it's kind of subjective. It's what most draws you to the show. The higher up on your list laughing is, the more you'll slot it as a comedy. But I always find it reductive when people call it a comedy. And I see a lot of headlines that are like, it's time to stop pretending Succession isn't a comedy. And I think it's a backlash, or it's a way for people to justify enjoying the show, because I think people are uncomfortable with how much they empathize with horrible people. And so they kind of have to create some distance of, well, I'm not really connecting with the protagonists, I'm laughing at them. But then episode 3 happens where Logan dies and you watch them all grieving. And I don't know, if you were laughing in that scene, I would have some questions. I saw somebody on Reddit was saying that when Roman broke down at his father's funeral, the guy was on Reddit, he was like, I was laughing my ass off because he so deserved it.
It's just nonsense. Like there's no way somebody would actually have that reaction, right? Like it's just nonsense. Like I think there's something to be said about this show, which is that like, I mean, a good show can make you empathize with anybody. And there are very empathetic, relatable, truthful elements of these guys' lives. And I think part of the point I think the show makes is they're not like inherently bad people, is they're a result of their circumstances. Like so much of this show, and I think the creator talked about this a bunch, is it's about like trauma and like growing up with, like the parents these kids had, right? That not just Logan, who we talk about a lot, but also their mother, right? Who's like very cold. She makes a comment about how she has an issue with eyes, right? She's extremely cold. And like, yes, this is the result on these kids. And yes, they happen to have a ton of power and leads to all these horrible things. But like, there are some fundamental truths about that anyone can relate to. And it's a little ridiculous the way people have, you're right, they want to call it a comedy or something because they feel so guilty about empathizing with these characters.
Cry me a river. Daddy didn't hug you enough. Go home to your billions. And I mean, I can see why you'd have that reaction. And I think part of what's so impressive with this show is it does get you to empathize with characters that, in the real world, you would have a big problem with.
Yeah, I mean, and like, look at Roman. Like, who cares that he's a billionaire? The level of pain. I mean, in that last scene, too, when he's, like, sipping that drink, where he's got this, like, weird smile, and then you see all that pain again.
Right.
Like, anyone can empathize with that.
I mean, the way I described it in a previous live stream is that if you take a character like Roman and you were to just transplant him into other circumstances, he would be a very empathetic character. You would feel bad for him. He would be just drowning himself in drugs and alcohol. The problem is that he's doing that in the context of being a billionaire with a lot of power. So the self-destructive choices he makes are destructive to people around him. And you could say, well, he should take responsibility for that. But part of what the show is saying is that for one reason or another, he doesn't and he can't.
So something this show, I think, shows a lot is character is destiny. Right? Like every character sort of gets what they deserved in this finale. My other question though is this show saying that you have no control over your character? Like, is this show is it nihilistic and like deterministic? Or do you think, does the show any signs that it is possible to overcome your past and change?
So, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that. And Mark Mylod, executive producer, Jesse Armstrong, the showrunner, both of them say outright that they don't really believe people can change. They don't believe people can change their nature. Personally, I don't think that's true. And I bet if you were to poke at it, they would admit there are exceptions. But in my opinion, one of the things that gets people to change is consequences. You do something bad, you suffer the consequences, and you learn from that. The problem with these characters is that they've been totally insulated from consequences. One of the biggest examples being Kendall killing that kid in the first season, or at least his reckless actions led to this character's death. And where a quote unquote normal person would probably end up behind bars, or at the very least publicly eviscerated, he has a hard time and he relapses, but ultimately what should be his rock bottom is kind of cushioned. So he doesn't hit the rock bottom that would typically cause a person to potentially change.
So I think you have a really good point there, but I'm just trying to think about like the suffering. So the rock bottom that Kendall hits after he kills that kid, how does that compare to, you think, the rock bottom he just hit now, losing Waystar? Because like I kind of want to say rock bottom is rock bottom for anybody, right? Like the level of pain he was experiencing, no matter how cushioned it was probably still the deepest pain he could feel, but maybe it isn't, and maybe that's proved by what happens in the finale, right? Right? Like, do you think the finale shows there are deeper levels to his pain that he never experienced?
It's almost different kinds of pain. One of them was an intense guilt and a sort of moral failure.
Yeah.
The other one in the finale is just a total emptiness, where the one thing he wanted that he defined his entire life by, he can no longer have.
Yeah, you're right. One was guilt. The other was a negation of like everything.
His life is completely without purpose.
He's a cog built for one machine.
Right.
And he's not even actually built for that machine. He doesn't fit into it.
No. How about I jump into it? Let's run through the episode. We'll definitely come back to some of these points. The episode starts out with Kendall racing for votes. It's a tight race. He puts up a facade of confidence. Meanwhile, Shiv is feeling a lot better. They're definitely in the winning position at the start of it, but we see a couple of cracks in the facade. We see the magazine article open where it seems the public is perceiving that Shiv is the puppet master behind Matsson. He says he's totally fine with that. I think we both know he probably isn't. And he comes out and says it outright later. Then Shiv, she calls Tom. And she first off brushes off most of his questions about his status and whether or not he's going to get to keep his job. Then she asks him if he's interested in trying a real relationship. She basically says that one of her biggest fears is what's underneath. What are all the awful things that two people in a relationship think about each other that are unsaid? Well, in their case, they have now been said. They have said the worst things to each other. Well, let's just enter a real relationship now with both eyes wide open. And he just isn't sure. He doesn't respond to her question in any kind of positive way. What did you think of Shiv calling Tom? Was she genuine here? Why did she choose to make this call now?
So I don't know why it wouldn't be genuine. Like, what would she... I didn't really think of anything she was angling for. I saw it as like all these characters have so much pain and an inability to go and get like the things that they want, like, or the things that would actually make them happy. And it's like, yeah, Shiv, like we talked about this before, right? Shiv and Tom, they have a real attachment to each other, but they have nothing and no ability to actually make a functional relationship. And I do think that's been a big hole in Shiv's life. And now that she's going to have a kid, I think she's really yearning for that real connection. So yeah, I think it was genuine, but I think she's just horrible at it.
I think like everything these characters do, it's a mix of a bunch of motivations colliding at the same time, because you also can't ignore that she's calling him when she is in the power position. She is so confident she's going to win. So it's like, okay, maybe now I can have Tom back, but still be the powerful one in the relationship. I think she was comfortable with that. With Tom was always with her because she was a Roy, and she's kind of now back in that position. But I do think there's definitely a genuine connection there. I think like we said the last time we talked about this, they do love each other and it's a transactional relationship. It's a little bit of both. Like everyone in this show's relationships are. So when you might sometimes act like it's transactional, and then that does things that hurts you on a personal level, and you just don't know how to handle that because none of them have had a pure relationship.
Well, I think so. I think Mark Mylod actually said this, but I've always agreed with this, that all relationships are transactional. But like a good relationship, you're not transacting material things like promotions and money, or like money in the case of like Connor and Willa. But instead, you're transacting, like spiritual values, right? Of like the good things you can bring to a relationship, of your personality and all that, right? And I think Shiv is transacting with Tom, but I actually think she was attempting to transact something healthy. And the thing I would point to is the fact that she says, do you want to have a real relationship?
Right.
Like she's actually saying real, like whatever that means to her. But I think that means whatever shadow version she sees of like a relationship where there's actual love and real values. Like I think that's what she wants. Because I didn't see her in a position of power in that call. Like she's increasingly powerful at the beginning of the episode, but I thought that was a real moment of vulnerability for her. She seemed vulnerable, and then she like bails on the conversation when she doesn't get the answer she wants.
So I think she became vulnerable because she didn't get the answer she was expecting. But I think she walked into it, like, to me, it was almost funny watching her talking to Mattson about how great things are going and how she's counting all the votes. And to me, it felt like somebody counting, what do they say, counting the chickens before they hatch or whatever. It just felt like she is too confident right now. And I felt like she brought that energy into the call with Tom.
That's probably, there's definitely an element of that.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I thought the first time I was watching, there was something that just felt amateurish about that scene. Like just the way she's tallying and like counting them up is like, she used to be like a political operative, like a political advisor, right? I don't know, she felt a little amateurish in that scene. And that did make me start to, at least Madsen was kind of looking at her in that way. I felt like in that scene, he was kind of looking at her like, do I really need you? And I was kind of feeling that as I watched it.
Yeah. I also liked how when the question of Tom came up, she kept being like, look, I mean, if he bothers you at all, get rid of him. Like on the one hand, like great for continuity, but seriously, get rid of him if you want.
Interchangeable cog.
Yes.
Did she actually say cog? That would have been interesting if Kendall then used the
She
same
either
language.
says cog or something very similar to cog. This is also, by the way, when she's in the room with Mattson, she gets the call. One of your brothers is at my house. So her mom calls her. One of your brothers is here, and it's not Kendall. So yeah, basically we've found Rome.
And by the way, that's another part that seemed amateurish, where Shiv's like, says to Madsen, an associate of mine has located Rome.
Yeah.
It's your mom.
Yes. So shortly after that, Kendall finds out that Roman is at their mom's house. That's important because he needs Roman's vote to win this. And just, by the way, where do they find this out? Greg, of course. I also like in this scene that Kendall calls Jess's replacement New Jess.
Yeah, I loved that. Yeah.
Which was fun. Then we get to the family reunion. So first, Shiv arrives. This is where we get her mom's line about blobs of jelly rolling around in your head. She was unwilling to do the eye drops for Rome because she doesn't like eyes. Face eggs, as she calls them.
She's got a point. Eyes are kind of weird.
They're kind of weird. I was reading about Freud a couple years ago as preparation for my Shining video essay. And he thought he got to the bottom of why we are so afraid to have our eyes poked or stabbed. I mean, nobody wants to get stabbed, but the idea of getting stabbed in your eye is just infinitely more terrifying than anywhere else. And his theory, you know his theory?
Yeah, it's because eyes are spherical.
Right.
Much like a certain part of the male anatomy.
Yes. We all are afraid to have our eyes stabbed because they remind us of our testicles.
I'm also scared to be stabbed there, though.
To be honest, I have two nitpicks with this episode.
I thought you were going to say with Freud.
No, I have a lot of nitpicks with Freud, but I have two nitpicks with this episode. This was actually one of them. It felt like someone thought of this funny idea. Like, what if somebody was grossed out by eyes because they're like face eggs? How do we find a way to shoehorn that line in here?
You felt like that was shoehorned?
It felt shoehorned to me.
Oh, I don't know. That felt natural. I liked it because I don't know, that seemed natural to me as just another sign of how sort of sociopathic and cold their mother is.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's the minorest of nitpicks. We've already spent too much time talking about that line.
Let's turn a mountain out of this molehill. Renege.
I renege it.
Thank God.
Kendall calls Stewie on the way, and Stewie reassures him that he is voting Kendall's way. It's all fine, but this is an important call because this is where there's an inkling out there that Mattson is meeting with other potential CEOs. The person they name is Lawrence Yee of Vulter, and you'll remember him possibly from the pilot of Succession. He's the guy that Kendall's negotiating with. He wants to buy Vulter.
Oh, I remember that. He's the one. Kendall and him did not get along. Right?
Not at all.
Okay. I liked him.
Because Kendall thought he was like the cool CEO on the cutting edge of technology, and Lawrence is actually that guy.
Yeah.
So Kendall will be like, "What's up, dude?" And then Lawrence is like, "Okay, dude." So Kendall arrives at his mom's house. The family is reunited. He agrees to stay for dinner. We get that great line where he says to Shiv, "Early bird catches the worm." And at this point, when it's Kendall, Rome, and Shiv talking, Shiv still sees herself as in the power position. She starts to offer, like, "Look, I'm going to be CEO, all right? Maybe you guys can have the 100 back," which I was glad that got a shout out. I would love to learn more about that business and actually see the proposal. Like, what exactly is the 100? But meanwhile, Mattson and Tom have an important meeting where Mattson asks him to give a soft pitch. And Tom basically sells himself as a cog in the machine, a very talented guy who can take leadership, a strategic vision, digest it.
Strategy.
Yeah, I thought that was great. It gives the audience whatever they want. He's not a thinker. He's not a visionary, is what I got from what he was saying. But without saying the words, he's telling Mattson, "I can be your puppet."
Yeah.
And Mattson starts to say that he doesn't want Shiv because I think, number one, he doesn't want somebody with ideas, right? He doesn't want a partner. He wants a puppet. And then he starts to say that they're a little clickety-clickety.
Clickety-clickety.
Yes, there's some sexual tension between him and Shiv, to put it as charitably as possible. What was your impression of the Shiv part of this conversation? How much of that was real and how much of it was manipulation / testing Tom?
I feel like it was both, right? Like, I think there's part of it that's real, but he's weaponizing it.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I think more than it being true, though, I think the first priority of him saying all this is to truly test how much of a puppet can Tom be.
Yeah.
Can I sit here and talk about sexual tension with your wife and you'll go along with it because you want to please me?
And Tom going, "We're men."
Yes. But he did such a great job of playing that scene.
Yeah.
Clearly so very bothered by what he's hearing.
Yeah.
I was half expecting the scene to go in a different direction. Where he's just
I thought there was a chance Tom would blow up on him.
Me too. I was kind of hoping he would.
Yeah. But of course, Tom is a pain sponge.
Yes. His entire life is, how do I get as close to power as possible? I think he sees that he is not a Roy. He's not like them. He's not like Logan. But his power is, like you said, being a pain sponge and just giving people what they want. Like, that's exactly what ATN, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what they do. They tell their audience what they want to hear. And so he is a puppet to leadership and a puppet to their audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I was thinking about this, right? He's so drawn to power and wealth, but like, I mean, to us as outside observers, it's more obvious. It's like, why? Like, what's the point for him? Like, he's not happy. Like, how is any of this actually enjoyable? Like, he's in pain. He's miserable. He's a pain sponge. Like, who cares that you have a bunch of money and power when, like, clearly you don't, it's not even real power, right? Like, he's never had any real power. Even if he owned the company, if he's just giving the audience what they want, he doesn't have any power, right? He's either a puppet for the audience or for Madsen or for Logan. Like, just what is the point? But it's just like all these characters' flaws, right? It's like that line from Dark. You can't avoid what you want.
It was essentially that we have such a strong will that we can eventually obtain whatever we want, but we can't choose what we want.
Yes. And like Tom can get a lot done, but he's a victim of what he wants, and he can't choose what he wants. He wants money and this, illusion of power.
But on the other hand, I think Tom is one of the most self-aware characters. I think he knows exactly who he is. Earlier in the season, he says to Shiv, I like nice things. I like this watch. I like cashmere. I don't know, what do rich people like? Eating, what's those little fish eggs?
Caviar.
Eating caviar. He likes all those things. And then he even says to Shiv, like, if you're not like me, then let's throw all this away. Come live in a trailer park with me. And she is like, I'll follow you anywhere for love. What in any other context and in most other movies would be this very romantic line. Like, I don't need any of these material things. All I need is you. She says that and they both laugh because they both laugh at the idea of true, genuine love, or they laugh at the idea of that romantic notion of prioritizing emotion over these material things, power, money, wealth.
Yeah. Well, but he's self-aware only to a point, right? Is he's self-aware that he wants these things, but he's not self-aware that he shouldn't want them, right? They're not making him happy. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter that he wants these things. He has all those things, and he's not happy.
That's true. I think though, but I do think that self-awareness does give him some power.
Yeah.
In the sense that he's not filled with self-doubt. He's not suffering. I think if you look at Shiv, Roy, and Kendall, they're suffering internally to varying degrees, and inevitably that affects their external performance.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the lessons, without spoiling anything from Better Call Saul, but Gus Fring, for example, he is a character who never had any moral struggles. He knew who he was, and as a result, he was one of the most effective characters. I think this show, I actually, because these are two of the shows that I've most engaged with intellectually, Better Call Saul and Succession, I've compared them a lot in my mind. And I think philosophically, I think they're opposed in certain ways, but where they overlap, I think this is one place. Is if you have internal conflict, that's going to affect your performance. And the people who don't lie to themselves about who they are, like Tom, inevitably perform the best. And I think it's no coincidence that he ends up getting what he wanted. He becomes CEO.
Is that the point of... Okay, so I think that's one element of the fact that he became CEO. No, that's fair. That's one element of it. It's also saying a bunch of other things, right? Which is just that, the people in charge, the owners, right? Like, they get to just assign these. What did Shiv call him?
Like an empty suit.
An empty suit. Like, I think there's, but I guess that's a less personal point. That's more of like a political point of like, it's the empty suits who end up in charge.
Right. But I think he was okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, I think he just wanted to be viewed as CEO. That's enough, whether he has the power or not. Like, it's to draw like a nitpicky distinction. I feel like the wealth is more important to him than the power. That's the impression I get.
That's fair, because he is getting real wealth out of this. That's right. Like, it's the illusion of power and then the real wealth.
Yeah. To add though, it's not entirely illusion. He does have some power. Like, he says at the end of the episode, he's going to get rid of Carl and Frank.
Yeah.
Who, to be honest, I don't think they want that, but I don't think they'll be too upset. They'll get their golden parachutes. And he has just enough capital to hold on to Greg, which was very heartwarming to me.
Yeah, I loved Carl and Frank talking at the end, watching Tom, and one of them makes a comment, we should have strangled him in the cradle.
Yeah, I love that. So I feel like I had one more point on Tom, but let me at least address Heather W. asks, can we call it a tragic comedy? Sure.
No, I'm sorry. You might be not. No, it's comedic.
My objection to calling it a comedy is when people call it. It's just. I think it's not just a comedy.
Yeah,
that's really all.
Well, okay. Here's one thing I was wondering about though. Is I think it's a drama. Like, I think you gotta say, you can't say it's a comedy, but it's also a tragedy, very clearly, right? And I think the plot follows that of a tragedy. Mm-hmm. Is tragedy a genre on its own, or is that like, are there like horizontals, which is like comedy, drama, and then there are like verticals, of like tragedy, and that, or do you know the?
I don't know. I think it really depends on context. Like, if you start to dig into what genre means, there's probably, I'm sure, like an entire school of thought and research I mean, if you look back at the classics of Shakespeare, like some are tragedies, some are
Greek
comedies.
tragedies and
yeah, and it
stuff.
probably gets more nuanced than that. I think of in our contemporary, today's day and age, what is the use of genre? It's primarily marketing, and it's a useful way of explaining to someone in just a couple of words what to expect from something, you know? And we don't have to go back into all that.
Yeah, and I guess the
Things
other
got messy earlier. Daniel was about to jump over the table. It was like Mattson and Tom. He was about to kill me.
the other point to make about calling it a tragedy though is it's more about the philosophy of the show and the creators of the show. And I think we both agreed, which is that yeah, like the creators, they believe character is destiny, and they don't really believe character changes.
Right.
That these characters are sort of they're victims of their childhood and their circumstances, and that plays out into sort of inevitable tragedy.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Or I 100% agree that is the view of the people who make this show.
Yeah, I don't believe that personally, but it's interesting to watch.
But in one of my favorite scenes of the episode, after Tom and Mattson have their chat, Mattson is talking to his friends about this whole plan to kick out Shiv. But what they don't count on, they're talking Swedish. They don't count on the fact that Greg, he's a youth that has access to apps.
He's a Ute. Sorry.
I did just watch My Cousin Vinny do it.
Oh yeah.
But he has an app that translates their Swedish into English, and he learns that Tom is going to be the CEO. So immediately,
Pretty sloppy of them, but I could also believe it. Like people always think they can just speak a foreign language and like nobody's going to translate it, or like nobody else speaks that language.
yeah,
That happened to our mom once. A really quick story.
Sure, go ahead.
When she was a cashier.
Wait, is this going to be a comedy or a tragedy?
This is. I
All
don't
right,
know.
go ahead.
Anyway, she was a cashier when she was like 16 in America, but she had just immigrated from Israel. Mm-hmm. I'm allowed to say that.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, she's like counting somebody's change, and it takes her a long time to count it. And then the people behind her like start saying that she's an idiot, but they say it in Hebrew. And then she looks back at them and says in Hebrew, "No, it's just a lot of coins. It takes a while to count." And then boy, did they have egg on their face. Anyway, back to Succession.
People treat. Okay, I'll do one little anecdote as well. But I used to work at a volunteer-run nonprofit movie theater. I would go there every day in the summer. I loved it. Get there at like 8 or 9 a.m. and stay there till 10 or 11 at night. But I loved it because I love movies.
And
then-
great popcorn.
Great popcorn, too. Some of the best popcorn I've ever had.
You would sometimes bring home big garbage bags full of that popcorn. We'd eat it for a week.
Yeah, it was amazing. But one night we were playing the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx, the biopic about Ray Charles. And it was one of the biggest nights we've ever had. Hundreds of people came in. And so I was ripping tickets. And after about 150 people walked by me, this woman comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, did you see my friend walk in? She's blonde." And I was like, "Well, a lot of people came in. I'm not sure. And she goes, "Really? You're not sure?" And she storms off. She comes back later with her friend and she points at me in earshot and goes, "He said he couldn't remember." I'm like a 15-year-old kid volunteering my time. And
That was pretty sloppy of you, Gil.
that was probably, you know who would do that? Like Roman.
Yeah.
That's exactly. I was
Sounds
dealing-
exactly like Roman.
Yeah, I was rubbing elbows with the billionaire elites. And I'll tell you this, I was much happier than them. They actually looked pretty happy. So I don't know. Greg gets this information that Shiv is out.
Yeah.
Tom is going to be CEO. And of course, he immediately calls Kendall and with the promise of great stuff in his future.
Yeah, if I give you something awesome, will you give me something amazing?
I was so glad we got this scene because I love watching Greg fumble his way through these. Like, he doesn't belong there.
Full quad.
Yeah. It's so great.
By the way, he's literally asking to be treated as an equal to the other three.
Yeah, which I don't think was ever going to, even if Kendall became CEO, I don't think Greg would, he would have gotten something. I don't think he would not have been part of the quad.
But it's interesting. It kept happening this season is people think they can make these deals that aren't enforceable, right? It's like you make a deal with Mencken, with the presidential candidate. It's like, but once you help him get the presidency, he doesn't need you anymore. He can just renege on the deal. Same thing between Shiv and Madsen. It's just so funny. And like, could be the same thing between Greg and Kendall. I don't know. People just keep trying
Well,
that.
it's political capital, right?
Yeah.
Like if you gain a reputation for being the kind of person who never stands by a Shandhake agreement, then you're not going to be able to make as many handshake agreements going forward.
Yeah, and by the way, but that's Greg's doing the same thing, right? By constantly betraying everybody, right? So I don't know. It's just again, it's because it's a tragedy, right? Like people keep doing all these things where you're like, it's not gonna work out. Like it's just not possible.
Yeah, which is anytime you get to one of the scenes of the Roys just getting together, everyone always calls out this one scene in season 1 where Rome, Kendall, and Shiv hang out on the boat smoking weed and just getting along like kids. Like it's anytime you see one of those scenes, it just turns your stomach because you know this is a small glimpse at what could be, and you know it's not going to work out
because it's a tragedy.
So Kendall pulls Rome and Shiv from their family dinner. And
where they're getting a really good pitch for something where the guy makes a comment, they're getting a pitch to invest in something. And the guy goes, and well, we'll be flying pretty close to the sun, but in layman's terms, we don't think they'll be able to get us. So he was definitely proposing something illegal, right?
I think so. And I love their mom's new husband, like that character. I find him so funny. And when they all leave the next day, he's like, what a total waste of time. It's just so funny to watch him. But so Kendall kind of rescues them from this pitch, rescues them from the dinner, and tells Shiv what's happening, that she is not going to be CEO. She's in denial at first, but as soon as she realizes he's right, it doesn't take long for them to agree. Let's become a united front.
A quick comment on that. It's interesting how quickly she believes it. And I do think part of that is it's like, yeah, it was really foolish to believe that Matsson would give it to her, right? Is like, I don't know. I feel like that just keeps playing out as people, they delude themselves in the show, right? Into believing they can get certain outcomes because, you know, they think they're so powerful or whatever. And it's like, no, like it's just not going to happen. Or like she was pretty clearly being played, and maybe we couldn't see it. I don't think either, right? Like it wasn't obvious that was the way it was going to go, but in retrospect, it is obvious, and I think that's sort of, yeah. I don't know. I think it's just another sign that these characters keep deluding themselves because of how badly they want these things.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. I was about to say it was a big misplay by Matsson, but in the end, clearly not.
Yeah, I think the misplay was the fact that he didn't cover it better. Like he was pretty sloppy with it. But I guess the reason he was sloppy was because he was confident he'd win.
Yeah. And he never would have thought Greg would leak it because he was like, Greg's on my side.
Yeah.
Now. He's my buddy. Yeah.
Wait, and we'll get to it later, but when they do the photo, like the signing at the end, and he goes, Jesus and his disciples, and even Judas is in the room.
Yeah, that was great.
That was so funny.
So they decide to become a united front. But they quickly realize we can't do another one of these. We have 2 CEOs or even 3 CEOs.
Yeah, Shiv asked, will like a tetrarchy or whatever.
She completely knew. She immediately realized, like, of course, that's
a
not
trio.
I do think we see over the last few episodes that Roman is the one who's been slowly opening his eyes, and he wants to cut through the BS. He knows it's got to be one person. And when I forget his name, but the guy they called their financial advisor to like run it by him.
Tell us,
that's right. Rome is like, just say it, because he knows what he's going to say. It's got to be one person. After a lot of arguing and deliberation, they realize it has to be Kendall. And I actually don't think they're wrong. The point is that Roman doesn't work because after the funeral breakdown, optically, nobody's going to look at him as a serious candidate. And he's not cutthroat enough, I think, as he showed his sympathetic side.
Do you believe that? Like, I don't know. I think people can get a bit of a pass for crying at their dad's funeral. I think it's more that like Rome doesn't have any real work experience. Like he sort of worked for Waystar for like a year or something, unless I'm like confused.
Well, I think he was COO and he was working under Frank. You know, when Frank was the COO.
Okay, I guess on paper you could argue he sort of did stuff.
Yeah, but he didn't do well though, is my impression.
Yeah.
Like, if I was rewatching season 1, and apparently he was very against this movie they were making called like The World's Biggest Turkey. He was like, that movie's gonna suck. And then it came out and did really well. So he got pretty pissed off about that.
In general, he sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and then he had all that. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of good reasons he shouldn't be.
I think if he was great and had a proven track record and all he did was get emotional at his father's funeral, I don't think it would have been a problem.
That's fair.
And then Shiv doesn't work because she was on Matsson's side 2 hours ago. So for her to just switch suddenly, at least the point they make is it wouldn't look good and it wouldn't work. And I bought it. It felt inevitable at this point. Like, everything worked out in such a way that to the public, Kendall made sense as the CEO. But of course, like everything on this show, and Kendall even says it, like, look, I'll be honest, I want it. But also, I think objectively, I make sense. Once they decide, oh yeah, a couple other things that come out in this conversation. They each try to play the card. Logan promised it to me. But what you realize is that at varying points, he promised it to each of them. And then I think part of the thesis of this show comes out in this scene where Kendall says, he told me I would be CEO when I was 7. It was in the candy closet. And he goes, that was messed up. Like, he shouldn't have done that. And that's what their dad did, right? He made his approval became synonymous with you become my successor. And that became the thing in their life, especially for Kendall. We were saying it earlier, like he was built just for this one thing. And if that doesn't work out, there's nothing for him. He's empty. But once they decide it's going to be Kendall, you can clearly see that such a weight lifts. That's when they get back to the happy times. They're not fighting it anymore. A couple other things in this scene. Kendall and, or when Kendall goes out to that little raft by himself and it's just Shiv and Rome, Rome asks, who do you think Dad actually wanted to give it up to? And Shiv says, I'm gonna say the F word. I'm quoting. I've never cursed.
Somebody bleep it.
Yeah, I've never cursed on live stream before, except for once under my breath while I was playing Dead Space, because I got frustrated.
And that time you hit your knee on the table.
Yeah, that's right. Which time?
Which?
Kendall? Yeah. Shiv says, I don't think Dad gave a fuck about anything more than putting one foot in front of the other. What does that mean to you?
I think it's... I don't think he... Oh man, what does that mean? I think he didn't care about his kids in a certain way. Like, I do think he cared about them. Like, Logan does seem human in certain ways, but I think he didn't have a normal relationship with them. And I think that's part of it, is like Logan could only treat his relationships very superficially and transactionally. I think that's a part of it, which is like he wasn't really investing in his kids, like, emotionally. Like, all he cared about was just doing his stuff. I don't know. What do you think it means?
A lot of what you're saying, where I don't think he necessarily had a plan. I don't think he thought through who is going to be my successor. It was more like, how do I best move forward?
Yeah.
And at certain times, it was advantageous to tell, for example, Shiv that she's going to be CEO. He needed her in his corner, so he held out that carrot. I think that's essentially what she's saying, is that he used it as a carrot when it was convenient to somehow progress in whatever he wanted.
I think the show is also saying that that's one of the things that made him so successful, right? Is now I don't agree with it, right? But the show is claiming that this type of guy who's so pragmatic and principleless, right? He's the guy who's successful, right? Because he'll just do whatever it takes at any given moment. And you do get that feeling from him, right? Is at any given moment, he just figures out a way to push through and get whatever he wants.
Yeah, 100%.
Which also means that he doesn't really, he's not too attached to anybody or anything.
People are just economic units.
Yeah.
People are markets. One of the best scenes in the season, by the way. You know what I'm talking about?
I remember these lines, but I don't remember what it's
He
from.
was talking to his bodyguard in episode 2, I think, and he basically says to him, "You're my friend. You're my best friend." Something along those lines. And then he starts to open up to him and he asks, what are people? They're economic units. People are markets. You kind of see him dealing with mortality and he just doesn't know how to process it. I think he's starting to feel guilty and he's self-reflecting. I don't have any real human relationships in my life. And he's sort of trying to justify that by saying, well, people are no more than things. They're just units.
One thought on that, though, is he doesn't have real relationships with his kids. But, like, does that dinner scene show, like, when we see him on video, does that kind of show he did have some real relationships? Like, it seemed like he was having a close, fun time with Connor and with his, like, girlfriend and with, like, his coworkers. Like, it seemed like a genuinely intimate, fun environment. And maybe it's more just like he did have some close relationships, just not with his kids.
I think that's true. I think he did have some genuine relationships. He didn't have it with his kids because with his kids, it had evolved into just fighting over who's going to be the successor, and it ultimately turned adversarial.
Yeah,
And so, well, just one more thing. When we keep saying how all the characters in this show, all of their relationships are transactional for material things, sometimes intertwined with genuine love and care. I think with their father, it was intertwined that way, but it had become purely transactional. Everything between them was a power play. So I think that dinner scene, is so heartbreaking because they realized that it was there. Their father did have a soft spot, but we didn't get to see it, not for a long time.
Yeah.
The only one who got to see it was Connor because he just put himself out of the running for being CEO. Even though in the first season, he makes a comment where he goes, I think I would be the better CEO, but it's unspoken. Like, well, it's not unspoken if you say it. No, I said it's unspoken, so it's unspoken.
The other, just as you were talking, the other sort of psychological point that came to my mind about Logan is that I think you're right. He doesn't have any super close relationships because those are the easier relationships to have, like the ones with his coworkers and with his like new girlfriend, right? Like these are pretty shallow relationships. And then the same thing with Connor is like Connor said he doesn't need love. He's decided he's not going to get love. He's okay without love, right? And so so Logan can get along with Connor because Connor doesn't want that much emotionally, right? But then with the rest of his kids, like that's supposed to be a really strong bond, right, between a parent and his kids. And so like Logan's not capable of that.
Right. I will say though, I think Connor, he probably wants it, but he's just accepted he's never going to get it.
Oh, I'm sure he wants it, but yeah, he's accepted it and he's not asking for it in any way.
Exactly.
Whereas the kids ask for a lot. Like the other kids, like they ask to be, their way of asking for love is asking to be CEO.
Yeah. I don't want to just be a billionaire. I want to be in charge of everyone.
It's so funny too. It's like you're already a billionaire. Like, don't you realize the rest of us don't want to have jobs, right? Like, if we had money, we wouldn't work. Like, that'd be great.
I just watched Office Space the other night. Which, have you seen Office Space?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I would recommend a rewatch. It's so funny. He's like, I don't really want to do my job anymore, so I think I'm just going to stop doing it. I'm just not going to work anymore. And they asked, what would you do if you had millions of dollars, if you won the lottery? He's like, I would just do nothing. I would just stay home and just chill. Yeah, these characters should watch that movie, get some perspective. But going back to the lake, where they'd finally decide Kendall will be the CEO. They're going to be a united front. Like I said, at that point, it does feel like a weight has essentially lifted, and they're all smiles. It's one of those season 1 hanging out on the boat scenes. We get to they joke about killing Kendall.
That was great.
Did you just try to murder me?
That's so not cool.
You get meal fit for a king, which of course Jeremy Strong did actually drink that.
Yep. I love the singing in that song, in that scene. A meal fit for a king.
It feels like a scene out of The Hobbit with the dwarves.
And then the background music started to fit it. Like it was a really cool scene.
Yeah.
And when Roman starts, when they make fun of their mom, the British accent, he doesn't like the nobbies.
Yeah, that was excellent.
And he starts licking the cheese. It was like I was dying laughing during that. But again, it's a tragedy. So, all these high points, but it was really heartbreaking because this isn't gonna last. Like when Kendall goes, we're gonna be okay, right?
Right.
No,
definitely
no.
not. So I think this show ultimately is somewhat cynical.
It's
right?
a tragedy.
Yeah,
I don't know if I mentioned that.
People are like, shut up. It's a little bit cynical. The creators of the show don't believe that people can change. But where I do see some optimism in the show is in scenes like this. Because they're essentially saying that, if you take this scene, this is when these characters are feeling the most joy. They're just having fun. Everything is light. Do you disagree with that?
No, I think that's true, but I wonder. I don't think it's pure. Like I think under the surface, there's still the pain, and I think they know that it's not going to work, right? Like I don't know. I think there's something to when Kendall goes, "We're going to be okay," right? And Shiv doesn't say yes. Shiv says like, "Shut up and drink."
I do think I think there are moments in that scene where they're feeling nothing but just connection to each other.
Yeah.
And they're having a good time.
That's true.
And I think that's ultimately what the show is saying about being happy. It's about genuine connections with other people. And the problem is that money and power taint that, because every conversation when you're a billionaire becomes somebody's trying to get something from you. and it cuts them off from that. Now, I think that's obviously an old lesson, right? King Lear, Shakespeare, right? These are lessons that have been taught over and over for thousands of years. Since humanity had the ability to speak and tell stories, I'm sure stories like this were told.
Tragedies.
Yeah, yes, tragedies. But like I always say, sometimes there are stories that need to be given a fresh coat of paint. And I think that's what they're doing here. The idea that money and power corrupts, doesn't buy happiness, you have to update that for modern times.
Yeah.
Make it contemporary, take things that feel like theoretical ideals and make them real. And I think this show does a great job of that. You can kind of laugh while you say it, but it really does make being a billionaire just look like the worst proposition.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely rather not be a billionaire. Like if to be a billionaire, I had to like be like Kendall, Roman, or Shiv, like I would definitely say no.
Exactly. I've had recently, I had a few moments where I kind of self-reflected, and we got together as a family, like me, my direct family, some extended family at a barbecue, and I sat down and I was like, this is it. Like, this is great. I'm having such a good time. This is what it's all about. You don't need that much to be happy. And I think that's essentially reflected here. They're happiest when they're just hanging out as brothers, and you don't need $1 billion to do that.
I was debating doing a Logan impression, telling you to F off.
Well, that's what the creators of the show are saying. Like, look, we're millionaires, and it sucks. Stop trying to make money. Leave all the money for us. All you need to do to be happy is hang out with your brothers and your friends.
These lies. Money will make you happy.
Yeah, it's so stupid. But I essentially think that's what it's saying.
Yeah.
And it explores what makes you forget that. And it's things like, of course, the allure of money and power, especially when it's so seemingly obtainable. It's held out as a carrot to them from the age of 7. This could be yours. So their brain rewires at that young age to say, that is the thing I need. Also, abuse.
Yeah, I was gonna, on the point of abuse, it's like, it's just to abstract even beyond the money and power thing, it's just what happens when, as a kid, instead of receiving love and building good relationships, you're just told, like, here's the thing you should want, and this is the thing that will make you happy. Instead of them, like, developing relationships and learning what do they want for themselves, right? They're just told, this is the thing, it's money and power,
right?
And this will make you happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And this will fill the giant gaping hole in your heart.
Exactly. And Silver Scale says in the chat, they don't do this for the money. They do this for approval.
Like I said before, they want to be CEO. That's their way of asking their dad for love.
Tom is a pain sponge. When you're young, you're a love sponge. You're looking for approval. And at that age, they weren't given any kind of emotional support, it seems. And the only way the way they saw to get approval from their father was money and power. Now, I think money and power are alluring on their own, but for them, it became the only thing in place of genuine connection.
Yeah, and it's so sad. I will get to it in a bit, but like when Kendall says, I feel like if I don't get this, I'll die.
Right.
And the reason for that is because, I mean, it's the only thing he has inside him is this yearning for his dad's approval. Is like, he was told he was supposed to be CEO. It's like, that's it. Like, that replaced the meaning, the love, everything inside of him.
Yeah, 100%.
It's very tragic, one might say.
So they decide to hide out at their dad's place before the board meeting. And Connor gets a great sort of final Connorism, where he's created a process for picking things of their fathers that they can keep. They're going to walk around the apartment, put stickers and everything. We also see, we get the final stamp on Willa and Connor.
That was sad.
It was, because I always felt like they had the most functional relationship, where, like Tom, who knows who he is, Connor and Willa knew what their relationship was. It's essentially him paying her, but she admitted, but I'm happy, and there's safety in the money, but I'm also happy, you know, I'm not that unhappy. But essentially, she's trying to arrange a long distance relationship.
Yeah, that was really sad. It makes sense, but I found that heartbreaking also.
But there's a funny moment though, where so the idea is that if Mencken wins, Connor is going to have to go long distance for his new job. And then Shiv says, well, did you hear about the court stuff in Wisconsin? Essentially, it might not go Mencken's way. And Willa just is kind of like, oh. So she realizes she's not going to be able to get rid of Connor like she thought.
That was so sad.
It was sad. I was pulling for them, but like you said, it makes sense. If this were a comedy, maybe things would have gone better for them.
Yeah. Oh, that Connor and Willa.
Dun, 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 dun. Then we get the virtual dinner. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but Connor's playing video of their father just being jubilant, would you say?
Quite jubilant.
Carl is singing. We see this other side to not just Logan, but like I mentioned, also Carl, Jerry, Frank. We never see them like this because every time our protagonists interact with them, it's adversarial. I don't want to keep using this word, transactional. I feel like I've said it a million times, but I think that's why this side of these characters was cut off to them.
Yeah.
And I really related to this because there were moments in my business career, specific times where I was surrounded by people who felt like characters from this show, where they were very focused on who is up for that promotion, who's up for this job. And even when we weren't at the office, but hanging out, that was the conversation. And I remember feeling like, everyone here feels like one-dimensional characters. Am I the only nuanced character on this show? And I remember just frankly asking one of them, I was like, do you have hobbies? Like, do you have things you like to do? I just needed to feel like they were real. And I think most people are, well, I think all people are real. Most people are real and have other sides to them. But depending on how you know them, you don't see them. And I think that's where the Roys find themselves. And so it's especially heartbreaking here when it's like, damn, they must have known Logan. They've seen him do that losers thing before, but they hadn't seen it in so long. They probably kind of forgot that Logan had this other side to him. And they had cut themselves off from it unintentionally.
And I got to imagine that as kids, it's like that element, that aspect of Logan was something they got glimpses of, right? It wasn't something that they were able to get very close to.
Right.
Which is part of the tragedy.
The song that Carl is singing, by the way, is Green Grow the Rashes. It's a song-like poem that celebrates the joys of love and friendship while acknowledging the fleeting nature of happiness and the inevitability of change. The poem reflects on the transient nature of life and urges the reader to appreciate the present moment and the company of loved ones.
Who was reading that poem?
That
was the song.
That's what Carl was singing. And then everyone else joined in. And Logan was like, You're killing it. You're ruining it.
You're murdering it.
You're murdering it. Yeah.
Wait, I couldn't figure out, honestly, even after watching it twice, I wasn't sure if he meant that you're murdering it in a negative or a positive way. Like you're killing it.
Definitely a negative way.
Okay.
But then I think he got swept up in the emotions of it. By the way, thank you, ChatGPT, for that little summation of what that poem means.
I started laughing. There's been a lot of interesting messages. We should go through them maybe at the end.
Definitely.
But I did just see Omar say, "You're just not a serious person, Gil. You're not serious people." That was such a good line.
A great line. Great line.
Man.
One, I believe, is echoed by Roman later in the episode. We'll get to it.
Oh.
That's a little tantalizing.
In a way. Okay,
yes,
we'll see.
It's a carrot for you to stick around.
I feel tantalized.
Ew.
That's a weird word.
Tom and Shiv talk.
What's Tom's last name?
Wobscans?
I keep saying in my head like Womscans.
Something like that. Well, why?
If somebody in the chat could say what Tom's last name is, I'd appreciate it. I've been saying Womscans in my head over and over.
I think it's in the ballpark for sure.
Definitely.
No wonder
Tom
anyway.
Wombat.
Tom and Shiv talk where she tells him how she knows that she's not going to be the CEO. Greg told him.
Yeah, maybe you should just vote it through then.
Which was just the most awkward Tom trying to be sly. And then he very quickly realizes, I'm not being subtle at all. Let me just tell her, yeah, it's me. And then chaos ensues. First, Tom corners Greg in the bathroom.
I loved that scene.
Yeah, he assaults him.
One of the several times this episode where I thought a murder might happen.
Which calls to mind when he was throwing water bottles at him in the safe room.
Yeah. Oh, that was such a great scene.
By the way, Daniel, you had the correct pronunciation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Womscans.
Yeah, Wombat. Exactly.
Wombat. Thank you, Omar. And thank you, Silver Scale, for telling people to drop a like. We'd really appreciate it.
Thank you.
What were you going to say?
Wake up, zombies. We get that scene. It's just pure chaos. Then we get to right before the board meeting. And Rome sees that Jerry is there. and starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
What was going on there? Why
Man.
was he so upset?
I don't know. Nothing ever really happened between Rome and Jerry, right? Did those characters ever even meet?
Yeah, they had some kind of interaction, I feel like, earlier in the season.
Just through a door, right?
So
Wait, do you get that?
I do get it, yeah. I think he's just remembering an earlier time when it felt like he might be CEO, where he was on the right track, and how much things have fallen apart since then.
And I think also there's the pain of like he did sort of feel close to Jerry, and he liked her, right? And that turned to, to not very good stuff.
Yes. And now there's one moment here where I've seen differing interpretations of it, where Rome hugs Kendall and his head is kind of pressed into Kendall's shoulder and it opens up the scar. So I interpreted that as Roman was doing that to himself.
Yeah.
It was the equivalent of when someone is hurting inside, so they hurt themselves on the outside. But I've seen other people say that Kendall grabbed his head and forced it into his shoulder and purposely ripped open those stitches.
So I interpreted it the first way you described, which is Roman doing it to himself. Jeremy Strong, I think, did say that while it's ambiguous, he sort of thought he was kind of shoving Roman into his shoulder.
Okay, so maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, upon rewatch, it did look, but it's hard to say, right? Like when you're consoling somebody, sometimes there is sort of affectionate like pressure, right? Like a hard hug, right?
When they have a gaping scar on their forehead.
Yeah, but I don't know. There was part of it that did look. It sort of looked like Kendall sort of just shoving him into him for comfort. Yeah. But then the look on Kendall's face, it was kind of a cold look. And also Kendall was already starting to act really cocky, and he put his feet up on his dad's desk and all this stuff, which just sort of made me feel like maybe that interpretation of like, no, Kendall's just like abusing Roman, but like also Roman's going along with it because like Roman is kind of used to this, and Roman likes to be sort of punished.
Right.
It's like, yeah, that was a really rough scene, and just Roman looking at his scar saying, well, but it's not that bad. Like it could be me. Like it doesn't look that bad. Why isn't it me? Why isn't it me? That was so painful.
I think he's kind of the MVP of the season for me.
Yeah.
He's just had the widest range of emotions, and this scene, him falling apart at the funeral, like those are the moments that are going to be burned into my memory from this show.
Yeah.
He did a great job.
He was really good.
So we get to the board meeting. And
was there a board meeting in this episode?
There was, but there's a twist. They're voting. And things are tied, right? 6-6. Shiv is the deciding vote. And apparently this was improvised. She was supposed to vote for Kendall, but on set that day, she decided to switch it up. And she ended up voting no. Against Kendall.
She voted no?
No, I'm just kidding. Of course, that was written. I was hoping for more of a reaction from you.
Sorry, I got distracted reading a message.
Damn, that would have gone
Was
down.
it? Do you want to say it again?
All right, so the vote gets to Shiv. She's going to vote for Kendall or against him, but she voted. It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Were you saying that it was like unscripted?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
She leaves the room. She needs some time to think because apparently she's changed her mind. Before we go into the insanity that comes after she definitively says that she's changed her mind and wants to vote for the deal to go through, why do you think she changed her mind?
I think it's the truth again coming through in part, which is that like Kendall's not going to be a good CEO. Like when she says it, that's true. Like Kendall is not going to be a good CEO. Like Kendall sucks. Like Kendall does suck.
Hold on. He doesn't suck across the board. Living Plus presentation, he did do a great job.
But it's lies. Like it's not true.
Well, no, a lot of what he said was true.
Yeah.
The stars will visit you at home. Hey, and what if I said it could last forever?
Big shoes.
Well, I can't say that yet. It started off awkwardly.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think he did a good job.
But it's fine. Okay, a guy can give like I've given a lot of half-assed presentations. It doesn't mean I should be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
True.
Like it just doesn't. Like I don't know. It kind of like it annoys me. It's like, yeah, he did a fine presentation. I'm getting heated about it.
Great
it's
presentation.
Like, that doesn't make him a good CEO. Like he sucks. Kendall does suck. Kendall would be a terrible CEO, and Shiv is right. So that's.
Yeah. What I think is, I think if things were status quo and he wasn't making any decisions, but just like signing papers
No.
and
Kendall would find a way to screw it up. Kendall sucks. Very clearly he sucks. They all suck, but Kendall definitely sucks. He would be a terrible CEO.
Okay.
But I think the other thing, and Shiv says it, she can't stomach him. And I can't stomach him either because he'd be a terrible CEO, but also because he's just like a bad person, right? And it's not, maybe it's not his fault, right? He was born, into really bad circumstances.
he also
with Logan and
botched it
stuff.
the night of the election. Like,
Yeah.
all of that was on his shoulders. I
Yeah.
mean, him and Roman, but of course he could have stood up and said no, and he showed no integrity.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have principles, he doesn't have anything. Like, he's got really nothing going for him. And he says it, right? He says, if I don't get this, I think I'll die. Like, yeah, he just needs this so badly, and like that's not a good reason to give it to him. Like, eventually he'll implode anyway. He's an addict. This is his addiction. Like, yeah, like, and I think all of that was making Shiv feel disgusted, right? Knowing he's not actually right for this. That fun time they were having together was an illusion, right? Like, it's just not real. Like, it's playing pretend. It's playing a meal fit for a king. And I think that was coming through. And then I think it's her own trauma coming out too, which is that like she can't stomach it because if she can't be on top, neither can he be, right? Like,
Yeah.
she can't accept it either. I think it's all those things.
I think, yeah, I mean, I really don't have anything to add to that because I think, like everything on this show, you can always point to multiple reasons why somebody does something. And if you asked Shiv, she would probably tell you the reasons that sound best.
Yeah.
She would go to the business side of it where I don't believe he would do a good job. I genuinely believe going for Gojo is the best thing for the shareholders. But underneath that, what she wouldn't say is that, yes, also, I think it should have been me. Also, this way Tom is CEO. I'm his wife. I'm still in the mix. It's everything all in one foul soup.
Gil, it's like when you pass OneTake on to myself, Alon, and Adam. I'm not going to let anyone sit in that chair. It's either me or I burn that chair.
Good. That's good news for everyone. You're going to get a lot of sycophantic Living Plus style speeches from this.
Just a bunch of videos of me talking to videos of you.
You're just not a serious person.
You're
Daniel.
not serious people. And Kendall's not a serious person. He can't be CEO.
Kendall doesn't take it well.
What?
He pulls out every trick in the book.
I'm the eldest boy. Watching it, I forgot he's not the eldest boy. I actually forgot.
But she has to remind him that. She's like, that's not true.
I was more thinking she was reacting to the absurdity of being like, just because you're the eldest boy doesn't mean you get to be CEO of this Fortune 500 company. But like, also, he's literally not the eldest boy.
He also, I think, one of the biggest moments, well, there's two major things that happen in this whole argument. One of them is Shiv throws in his face, you can't be CEO because you killed a guy. Which, when has that stopped anyone from being CEO? Am I right? But Kendall tries to erase it. He does the thing that Logan did, which is try to play it off like it's not a big deal. That guy didn't matter. He was nobody. And Kendall tries to erase it. That never happened. I made that up. I was trying to strategically get us all on the same page, so I made something up to make you feel bad. So that crosses a moral boundary. In terms of Kendall having nothing at the end of this episode, I think that's part of it. You could at least empathetically read into the fact that he feels guilt over what happened with that waiter. He did go back in the water once. Maybe his inebriated brain felt like, I can't save him. And that kid, by the way, is the one who turned the wheel at the last second when they saw the deer. So there's a way to read it where you could at least imagine internally how he could justify it to himself. Like, yeah. I tried, I wasn't thinking straight. Maybe he could find a way to live with it. But to now try to absolve himself and say it didn't happen crosses such an undeniable line that it's hard to get that soul, that part of yourself back. And then when Rome says something that Logan apparently said, Kendall's kids aren't real, that they don't have his DNA. I think one of them was adopted.
One's a buy-in. So right. That sounds like adopted.
A buy-in.
And the other is a half, what's his wife's name?
Rhea?
No,
I'm mixing
Rhea's the CEO that Logan sleeps with.
Yeah, by the way, Omar says no real person involved.
No real person
the
involved.
Actual terminology they use in the
Which
show.
Is sort of like Cersei and Jaime Lannister saying, right? Like, these regular people, they don't matter.
Rava.
Yeah, half Rava, half some filing cabinet guy.
Right, so in vitro.
Oh, or she cheated on him. I think ambiguous. Yeah, and then, Kendall Kendall actually shockingly takes a moment and says, all right, let me take a minute and collect myself.
You're right. Oh my God, what have I done? He attacks Rome in
Yeah.
a very interesting way.
Yeah.
I've never seen someone go on the attack that way, where he didn't punch him. He firmly grabbed his face.
But I would say that was a very that was like a very brotherly way you could see people fight. Like, I don't know, it felt like the type of thing you would see kids do to each other, right? Like, I mean, a very vicious version, right? Like, it looked pretty bad, but that did seem like the type of thing like one son would do to like another son. I don't know why I said that. I guess I'm thinking about Logan and stuff.
One
Like
boy.
one brother would do to another brother, right? Like just grab their face or something. I feel like
Right.
we used to do that to each other.
I to be honest, I've never seen that.
Alana always threatened to jam his thumbs through my eyeballs, like in 28 Days Later.
Your face eggs.
Face eggs. That was brutal.
He attacks Rome, which is actually partially why I like reading the earlier scene of the hug as unintentional from Kendall's side and more self-inflicted by Roman, because I like there being this definitive moment where he crossed the line. He crosses a couple of lines.
Yeah.
He crosses the no real person involved line, and then he
It's like
crosses
sickening.
the abuser becoming the abused line. He crosses in this moment. It all happens in this one intense climactic scene. One of the most intense scenes in the show. One of the reasons why I love this finale is just incredible.
That scene, that was just such a gut-wrenching scene.
There's one thing. I mentioned I have two nitpicks. One of them was I thought face eggs was a little bit contrived.
And you reneged it, though. You reneged
Okay,
that.
so
You can go to timestamp at 12:31. You reneged it.
That's right. But I have one nitpick in this scene. When Rome calls his kids fake, not the real bloodline, and Kendall goes in the attack, this guitar riff kicks in. And you never hear that kind of sound on Succession. It's usually this like bombastic classical score. So it's hard to miss where it all of a sudden goes like, meow. And this is just me. This is a subjective thing, but it felt a little cheesy. Like Kevin Smith, when he's describing an intense moment in a movie, he always goes, man. It felt like that. And it's my fault, but that's what I heard in my head. And it slightly undercut it. But let me say this. First time I watched, didn't even notice it, didn't bother me at all. Amazing scene. But second time, when I heard the guitar riff kick in, and it's such a sound you don't normally hear on this show, it made me laugh a little.
Well, you're welcome, everybody. Now you can notice it too. I didn't notice it. I'm going to forget about this conversation, so I won't notice it either.
Yeah, try watching it again. I've now ruined the finale for you.
The other thing, you can't really complain about this, but like Shiv did seem like really increasingly pregnant throughout the end, like this finale.
She is pregnant.
Yeah, she's actually pregnant, which by the way, I think they did a really good job. I mean, I assume it wasn't planned to include pregnancy in
you
this
must
season.
get pregnant for our show.
But I thought they did a really, it sort of fit the plot. Like, I felt like they did a really good way of integrating it. But yeah,
it's hard to but on that point, it's really hard to feel any. I really kind of hated Tom by the end because he never circled back on how cruel he was to Shiv when he accused her of making up. When she said she's pregnant and he was like, is that even true? I understand in the moment, I will give it to him. Extremely stressful night. They have said the worst things to each other. So you could buy that somebody would say something just as a, I don't know. I can at least understand why he would say that. But I would have liked to have seen in the next couple of episodes for him to come back to it at some point. Apologize. I'm not saying I don't buy it. I completely go with it. But literally in terms of how I view the character, it really makes me dislike him.
But I guess, I mean, they both said such horrible things to each other. I felt like there was sort of an understanding between them at that point, which was like, well, we said all these horrible things, and like I don't know. It didn't seem like either of them were going to revisit those topics.
Yeah, that's fair. It just adds, when you bring a child into the mix, it's suddenly the stakes go up in every regard.
I think there's a point too, right? This whole show was about succession, right? Succeeding Logan, and that did not go very well, right? And now at the end of this, we have another kid coming into this world, and it looks like that kid is not going to be born into a very loving family either, sadly, which is like this intergenerational trauma just like continuing.
Right. Or maybe Tom actually doesn't know. He's like, oh yeah, she's not actually pregnant. And then when she gives birth, I'll be like, wait a minute. That was true? Turning the love back on?
I thought you were going to say he was going to then bail.
No. That's not Tom.
No, that's not Tom. I don't think.
I'm back on the Tom train. I think he just doesn't know. He's ignorant of it. Back in the conference room. So while Rome and Kendall are fighting each other, Shiv goes back in and puts down her vote. They're going to sell to Gojo. It's over. But meanwhile, one of my favorite lines in the series, Rome tries to calm Kendall down and essentially tells him, we're bullshit.
That was my favorite line.
We're nothing. We're bullshit.
It's all nothing. We're nothing. We're bullshit. You're bullshit. I'm bullshit.
Yeah. It was just,
man.
It's heartbreaking. It's true. In this respect, it's true. They don't deserve to run this company. They haven't earned it. And it's just true. It was just,
they're bullshit.
For him to realize that and then to say it to Kendall. And I think it hurts a lot more for Kendall to hear than for Roman to say.
Because I think there's a part of Roman, I think Roman always felt that. Like, Roman always kind of knew they were bullshit. Roman was always the more explicitly sort of nihilistic one of the group. And I think, he was doing all this stuff with, corporate politics, whatever. And then he's back to this like sort of playboy lifestyle at the end, which I think he more naturally fit into that of like, we're bullshit. I'm bullshit. I'm nothing, whatever. I'll get drunk and who knows what else. God, it was just heartbreaking though. That's such a good line.
After that, Kendall goes back. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, and then he ends his rant like, "You're nothing, I'm nothing, we're bullshit, whatever." And then like it's a profile view of him, and he goes, "Okay," like he says it like he's done. He finished it.
Yeah, he
like,
gives us like,
"We're bullshit." Okay.
Yeah,
I got it. Like, I figured it out. We're done.
We're
bullshit.
Incredible.
Think about this show. It's like this feels more painful than thinking about like Better Call Saul. Like, I think this is even, and that show got pretty painful at times, but that like, I don't know, that line from Roman is just so painful.
Yeah. Kendall goes back into the room.
Which was unscripted.
That was unscripted.
That was such a cool.
Did you listen to the Insider podcast?
Yeah, of course I listened to the Insider.
I wanted to be the smart one.
No, I took notes. I've just been parroting everything I heard.
Somehow I have all these like, well, my sources tell me that scene was improvised.
An associate of mine has informed me.
Right. So it was, but I will say this. The final official podcast is 2 parts. The first one includes Jeremy Strong.
There are 2 parts.
You're bullshit.
I'm bullshit.
We're nothing.
We're nothing.
In part 1, Jeremy Strong's, the way he explained
One second. Silver Scale listened to the HBO podcast and...
How dare you?
How dare you?
Well, to be fair, we've never talked about this show before.
I know, and also I listened to it. No, it was great. You should check it out.
So Jeremy Strong, the way he explained it, to me, it sounded like it was his impulse. Like, maybe I should go back into the boardroom one more time.
Yeah.
Then if you listen to part 2 with...
Mark, he yells to him, go in there.
Mark Mylod, the director, it sounded like it was his impulse. In any case, it was an improvisation on set that after this whole argument, Kendall actually walks back into the boardroom and has that line of like, okay, let's adjourn. And then Frank is like, it's done. You don't have it.
You don't have it. How cool that the camera people and the sound people all had to follow, like unexpectedly. And the fact that, oh my God, what's the chairman's name? Frank, yeah. The fact that Frank like stays in character and figures out what to say, that's so cool. I love it.
Well, he wasn't in a character. He was telling the actor, like, the scene's done. It just
like, the scene's over. Get out of here.
After that, when Kendall goes to the elevator, were you worried like I was?
That he was going to kill the guy in the elevator?
That he was going to kill himself.
No, I was worried he'd kill himself.
As soon as he hit 0, I was afraid he was going to hit the highest number on there and take the elevator to the top floor.
So I thought he was going to go kill himself. But when somebody snuck into the elevator at the last second, I thought he was going to kill him. I thought there was a real chance Kendall would just kill the guy. And it was, I have to say, I don't know, I thought that was... Everyone on that floor just watched what happened, right? Yeah. Like, who is this rando that's going to get in the elevator with Kendall?
I love the cuts to the perspective of the boardroom where you just hear Kendall shouting, like, what's the logic? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't even make any sense. Oh, that was such good acting. It really is good.
Yeah.
I thought, like, what idiot is getting in that elevator?
I mean, not everybody was present for that. No, I thought that guy was already in the elevator, actually.
No. Kendall went in first. He snuck in right before the doors closed. I rewatched that multiple times. I was like, I got to make sure I got this right. Yeah.
Man, I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I'm just saying that's like the floor where they have the board meeting. Like, that's not a floor where there's a bunch of randos in the office. Like, I don't know. This guy knows what happened.
He was an extra. He snuck on set. He wasn't supposed
It
to
was
be there.
unscripted. And who's the showrunner? Mark Mylod was like, "Oh, this is perfect.
Go
like,
with
this
it.
is
Go with it.
Go follow." He tells all the extras, "Follow your
Yeah,
instincts."
we're gonna go with that guy in the spinoff. The guy in the elevator.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna kill that guy. I was really scared.
That thought never crossed my
I thought he might kill Roman. I really thought there was a chance he kills Roman.
See, I think that TV finales have just skewed our perspective, where because it's the last thing, it's the last movie, it's the last episode, someone's got to die. That's the only way things happen in life. That's the climax. Someone dies.
I refuse to have this statement of mine belittled because I think it's a testament to the dramatic stakes. Like, I think the dramatic stakes felt high enough that a murder could happen, in the same way that the dramatic stakes felt high enough that a suicide could happen.
Yeah. I was actually very afraid of a suicide. I saw.
You'll renege though.
Well, okay, I renege. Okay. Sure, you can have it.
Thank you.
When they were doing the signing and Rome was forced to go in and have his picture taken, the way the camera was angled, I was like, we don't see that much window. I was like, are we about to have Kendall's body just falling in the background? I thought maybe when they took the photo, it was going to be this symbolic thing where as Rome signs over the company, you see Kendall's body in the background.
That would be so messed up.
It would have been messed up. I'm glad they didn't go that way. But I think it was not unintentional that we would fear for Kendall's life at the end. I mean, he literally said himself, like, without this, I'll die.
Yeah, I think I might die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should try that with the YouTube algorithm. I'll message them like, look, if this video doesn't do well, I think I might die.
It didn't really work for Kendall, so
True.
You don't have it, Gil. You never had it.
We go through the ending. How dare you, by the way? So now we're kind of at the ending here, where it's almost like a montage where we get a little capper for each character. Most importantly, Frank and Carl. Golden parachute, Frank, and then Carl says, I'm thinking one last rodeo, which felt like set up for a spinoff. 10 seconds later, Tom's like, they're both dead. He's going to fire them. But like we said earlier, Tom assures Greg, we'll keep him around, puts the sticker on his head. I love that.
That was great.
Rome is forced to do the photo op with Mattson. Then the last we see of him is sitting alone at the bar, drinking a martini, I believe, smiling, but the smile breaks. We see some sadness. The smile comes back. We see some sadness. And that's where we leave Rome. Happy ending, sad ending. What happens to Rome from here?
Definitely sad ending. But I think I honestly, even for Kendall, I think there's something potentially positive about this. Is like, for Kendall, I think he needed, like, it was always a delusion, right? I don't know for how long, right? You know, it wasn't necessarily always a delusion. Maybe he could have become a happy person and a capable person, but at least since we've watched him, it was always a delusion for him to think he could become the CEO and to think he could be happy, like, on that path.
Yeah.
And so I think somebody like that, I think, does need to be broken. Like you were saying, like, I think they need to hit, like, an addict needs to hit rock bottom in order to get clean. Like, I don't know if that's actually true, but like, that's my conception, right?
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know.
So I think Kendall needs that. I don't think it's very hopeful at the end, right? But in a way, you got to think there's more hope now than before, because at least now he's actually been broken and he's hit rock bottom. Like, there's a chance to figure something out in life. And maybe it's the same thing for Roman, is like, you know, he's been trying to get over his father's death and like all these other issues. Is like, I think it's good he's not involved in the company anymore. Like, he needs to be far away from that stuff. Maybe he's just going to drown himself in alcohol, which would be tragic. But I don't know. Like, there's something about the finale that did also feel like a beginning for them, right? Like, maybe there's a chance here.
It's almost it's the whole death of the author thing. I almost wish I hadn't heard Mylod or Armstrong talking about this stuff, because Mylod, he says, oh, the ending is tragic. That's how he views it. I don't believe people change. But if I were to look at this and separate myself from what the creators of the show have said, and I just look at Rome, there is to me, a sense of relief. Like, I'm out of it. Like it's over. And I've had that feeling before when I'm dealing with something really stressful. I almost imagine a brick wall and I'm on a train. And I'm like, no matter what, I'm hitting that brick wall. And once that happens, the situation is over. It will resolve itself in some way. And that gives me a sense of, okay, at some point this is going to be over. Like Rome has now hit that point. And unlike Kendall, he's done it with wide open eyes. And when he voted for Kendall in the boardroom, you see some hesitation. It's not just an automatic,
Yeah.
I'm for Kendall. Like he hesitates.
And then Rome pretty quickly flips with Shiv, right? Is like Rome very quickly turns against.
Yeah, though that
Kendall.
seemed to be pretty emotionally driven. It's when Kendall is attacking his pregnant sister. He's
Yeah.
like, whoa, okay, I'm voting against you. Now, yes, all that other stuff is in the mix. I think business-wise, he probably had similar thoughts as Shiv. Kendall's not the best guy for this. So he's ready to say no. And then once he has the reason of you're attacking my sister and you're being horrible and you either lied about killing someone or you did kill them and you're trying to erase it now. So I'm going to vote against you. But the whole we're nothing thing, he has exited the situation with more self-awareness than Kendall, is my view. So to me, if either of them have a chance at springing back from this with any positivity, it's Rome. Like, okay, have a couple of drinks, no problem. And then reassess your life. What do you want to do? I think he likes movies, right? Start a YouTube channel. Open invitation, Rome. You want to pop on one? I was the guy in the elevator. I was like, Kendall, can you hook me up with Rome? I got an idea for a podcast. I think it'd be great. You can guest star on it. But
And I don't think they can get us on it.
Yes.
yeah.
I'm with the guy at the dinner.
Because it's also a pitch.
That's right.
It made sense.
So I personally, my philosophy reads Rome's ending as potentially hopeful because he's out of a situation he shouldn't have been in. He shouldn't have been CEO, and it's better that that's been taken away and he can find himself. Like, go find yourself. He was willing to go to that training program. To me, it feels like he is the one between him and Kendall that could possibly be open to trying something other than I need to be CEO of Waystar. But Mylod said that people don't change, and he views the ending as tragic. So, I think if you were to view it ambiguously, then it's your life philosophy. How do you come at it? Do you believe people can change? Do you believe somebody can come back from this and find some other path through life? I tend to be more optimistic. That's how I view it.
Yeah, and I think we both believe that people can change. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of reason to, I don't think it's the creator's intention, but I think there's a reason you can view the ending as slightly hopeful.
Yeah. Tom and Shiv in the car.
And, sorry, one last point is what's going to happen? Like, what Kendall's going to spend the rest of his life purely miserable? Like, it's possible. But, like, I don't know. Like, when most people get hit that hard, right? They try to change something, right? Like it feels absurd to me to say nobody changes and nobody ever changes. It's like, I don't know, it's pretty bad. Like,
I guess the argument would be that none of them can hit rock bottom because they have the $1 billion safety net.
But you look at Kendall in that scene, it's like, who cares that he's got $1 billion? That's rock bottom. Like, I don't know that I've ever felt that level of pain.
Can they that's the question though, I guess, is can they recognize that he had, when he was licking the cheese, I've never seen Rome look that happy. He was having a great time. Does he recognize that this whole experience has tarnished that, and he's not going to be able to just be friendly with his siblings again?
Yeah.
Does he see that? I don't know. Tom and Shiv, they're in the car.
Yeah.
Tom offers his hand. Eventually, well,
and
first
Shiv grabs it, kisses it.
Oh yeah. Shiv congratulates him. And he's like, no. Eventually, she takes his hand. I mean, to me, this felt like they're going to sort of fake it. We're going to be married. There's still some love there. Like, I don't think love is the kind of thing that can just be erased in a second and it's just officially gone.
But I don't think they're able to feel it deeply. Like, it can't get beyond the surface. It's too painful.
Yeah, I guess it's another one of those, if I wasn't allowing the cynicism of the showrunners to tarnish my view, I would say if there's love there, and we know Tom wanted to have a child with her, and she's having a baby, potentially could the spark come back? Or will it be tempting for Shiv to try and run the show from the side because she has an angle now? Is she working on another way back in? I don't know. I guess it's the nice thing about all these endings is that they are played. They're played ambiguously enough that you could argue yourself into a really cynical read or a more hopeful one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to the fact that like it's like a slice of life, right? It's like we saw them for a little while. Like, if you think of them as real people, like they're going to continue long lives after this. And so there's always hope. And there's also like pessimism, right? Like, I think clearly it ended in a pretty cold way between Shiv and Tom. But like, you're right. There's a possibility for something there. Like it was left open-ended. Like Shiv asked for something real and Tom said he didn't know, right? He didn't say no, but he said he didn't know. And it's like, it's possible. It could happen. I mean, clearly that relationship is going to evolve. It's very different from before, right? Their positions have totally changed. But I don't know. It's I'm just not. I think they'll probably stay together, but I'm not super optimistic that it's going to be like a very cuddly, great relationship. Right. And by the way, Tom, why did Tom want a kid with Shiv? I thought it was mainly just to like impress Logan and be like part of the Roy clan. Like, do you think it was like I want to be a father with you, Shiv? Like, I don't know if it was that.
I don't know. Maybe I need to rewatch because I guess that's the optimist in me. I was like, he just wants to have a family.
I mean, Logan prods at Tom at one point being like, when are you giving me a grandson or are you shooting blanks? Which, by the way, is a reference
like
potentially
my son
to
Kendall.
Yeah, infertility. Potentially.
God damn. I got to watch something more positive. Barry. That's such an optimistic. Oh, wow.
Oh, that's so nice.
Tony from Hack the Movies. Thank you for the super chat and for refunding me my Patreon payment. Essentially, I have never watched the show. I just wanted to say hello and that I am very famous. Tony is very famous. He is uncredited football game crowd member in The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite Batman movies of all time.
By the way, Tony added by show I meant Succession. Just to clarify, he doesn't mean he never watched this show.
Thank you for the clarification.
Usually when people want to clarify, they send another super chat to make sure.
Yeah, I shouldn't have read that. Like, I mean, without the big yellow highlight, I can't see that text or that message. Thank you, Vitaphone Vision Sound, for the super chat. I think the best Tom and Shiv could hope for would be a House of Cards style relationship at this point.
It definitely kind of looks like that, like aesthetically.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry. Hack the Movies is back. I was the glue that held the film together.
Well, did you thank him for the super chat?
I did, right?
Okay.
Tony, thank you for the super chat.
No, I meant Vitaphone. Did you thank him?
I said I'm famous. I didn't say I was rich. Who cares about Vitaphone?
Hey, I care about Vitaphone. Are you saying Vitaphone's not a real person? No real person involved?
No, Vitaphone.
Well, put Vitaphone back on there. Thank you, Vitaphone. I agree. And by the way, in House of Cards, there was something real in that relationship.
I didn't watch that show. I'm like Tony for House of Cards.
Vitaphone. Include another super chat, but about Better Call Saul or something Gil has watched. Thank you.
Yeah, so Tom and Shiv, we kind of closed out on them, right?
Yeah.
So they're back in love. Everything's gonna work out great. They're gonna renew their vows. Rome's gonna be at the wedding. Only this time he's not gonna blow up a spaceship.
Somebody only lost a thumb. What's a thumb? Who needs thumbs?
Kendall. So Kendall wanders the park, and then he sits by the water.
Yeah.
And Daniel, did you do? There's an improvised moment here.
Where he climbed over the edge.
Yeah. So apparently Jeremy Strong, the actor who plays Kendall, in one take he climbed over the fence, and then the guard, that actor, ran over and stopped him.
How funny! I love the idea, though. I think it's so cool the way that actors and even the camera people and like the way everyone works together on the improv when it happens. Yeah. Right, like this idea that one person has to react like an idea, and then everybody else reacts in the way that they would react. Like I just thought that was really cool.
Though, did you The way I read it almost was that the actor was legitimately concerned, like, wait, Jeremy has gotten too into character. He's about to jump over the railing. I need to go. I mean, either way, it worked for the show.
To be honest, I kind of read it as like there's a combination. It's like the actor's like, well, somebody needs to stop him because like I don't know that they were ready to like fish him out of the water if he jumped, right? So I sort of read it as, and I think like a lot of acting has to be that way, right? Like there's a mixture of real and the fiction stuff in there. But yeah, it's so funny that like the guy who plays the security guard is like, I gotta go save him.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason I think they didn't want to keep it is because it shows a choice. Like if he gets off the railing, it shows a choice that he chose to live.
Well, I don't know about that because I think even without that, like in the version we got, he doesn't climb over the railing. But even without that, seeing the security guard there, I was like, he's not going to be able to take his own life here. Also, by the way, it's not like
it's like the water's right there.
If he jumped into the water, I don't think it would have killed him. Like I think it would have been fine. I don't know if it would have been fine, but
he would be fine if he didn't try to survive. You know, like if he pushed himself away from the edge and didn't swim back, he'd die.
Right.
But you're right; it wasn't clearly a place you could kill yourself.
Yeah. But the version we got, he just sits on the bench, and I mean, I don't think it's that. There's not much to read into it other than when you stare out in the water, that's the quintessential, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, just pondering.
And you have the Statue of Liberty there, right?
Yes, I did notice.
It's
I noticed that detail on both times I watched it. But Daniel, for the folks at home, what's the symbolism?
What was that? I saw that in something I watched recently where it's like, of course I know about that. Oh, it was in Spider-Verse. He's like, you know about the shoulder touch. He's like, of course I know about the shoulder touch, but just tell me anyway. Yeah, the last Statue of Liberty was there. It adds a little bit of the Americanness of this show and the scale.
That's
anyway,
it.
That's I don't know. I didn't have that much more to. I like that area.
The Statue of Liberty symbolizes the Americanness of the situation. Omar says that water was pretty choppy.
It was choppy. That's true. A little choppy.
But we've gone through Rome. We went through Tom and Shiv, and for each of them, tragedy. Or do you feel hopeful?
No, this is a comedy for sure. I don't. Yeah, I think this is a comedy.
So Jeremy Strong, he saw this as an entirely tragic ending. Kendall will never come back from this.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to read it any other way.
But my issue is like fundamentally, I just don't believe that. Like, how can there be anything that nobody can ever come back from? I just don't buy it. Like Kendall's like 41, 42. Like I just don't buy it.
Don't you feel like I think it's common enough that it's a cliche where there's those people who hold on to the glory days of like, I was the quarterback of the football team in high school. I would have gone pro, but I stubbed my toe the night before the big game, right?
I don't know. It's just life is long. It's hard for me to believe. Like, look, okay, there's definitely a possibility he never gets over it, but it's just clearly not inevitable. Like, there's also examples of people overcoming things. Like, it's just hard for me to buy.
Do you think don't you think that's the exception though? Like so I think this kind of, one thing I love about the ending of this show is it does become a sort of mirror for what you believe. And it's left, as long as you ignore the comments from the showrunners who will tell you Kendall's ending is tragic. Sure, maybe he can find a way back from this, but I don't know. I certainly didn't see it that way. If death of the author, you just look at it on your own, it can kind of tell you how you view the world. And yeah, you and I we tend to be more optimistic. We believe that people, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you believe people can change.
Yeah.
Bad people can become good people. Or people who prioritize the wrong things and are unintentionally not optimizing for their own happiness. Yeah. They can change
Unhappy
that.
people can become happy. The
Right.
people who make the wrong choices can eventually make the right choices.
But do you think that's the exception? Don't you think most people get trapped? I heard them use on the official podcast, they use the term doom loop. Don't most people get caught in how many times do you see people who make the same mistakes over and over and they just don't change?
I mean, I don't know like the statistics, but yeah, based on just like empirical experience, I would guess it's the exception. Like I think, because to be honest, I think most people are not very happy, right? Like I think happiness is less common than unhappiness. But I think there's always hope.
And if you're creating a work of art, what should you put out into the world?
Ideally, okay, it's a little like this is such a good show, but I mean, I totally disagree. Like, hot take, right? Totally.
Wait.
Yeah, somebody asked for a hot
Quiet,
take.
yeah. Dylan S, thank you for the super chat. Anyone who gave a super chat that I haven't
We'll
called
get
out
there.
yet, it will get called out.
Thank you so much.
Any hot takes on the series, guys? Would you say overall this was your favorite season? Going back and watching season 1, it wasn't as gripping as I remember.
Can I do my hot take quickly then?
Do your hot take, and then we'll address this.
Can we potentially cut this out as a clip if it's good?
Sure. Okay, we'll make this really good.
All right, look, I think Succession was an amazing show, right? I think incredible. Extremely well done and gripping and gut-wrenching and painful, right? Like, really good. But I completely disagree with the philosophy of the show, right? Like, I fundamentally disagree with this idea that people can't change. I think it's just wrong. Like, people clearly do change. Like, if you just keep your eyes wide open, which I think was the name of this finale, right? Like, you would see that there are people who change, right? And especially when people go through such painful, traumatic experiences as what these characters went through, right? Like, these kids went through a horrible upbringing, right? Not just from Logan, but their cold mother also, right? Like, they were raised with such bad ideas, bad experiences, abuse, horrible, right? And I think good art should take us through that pain and should make us feel it and understand it. But ultimately, good art should tell us you can overcome it. Because what's the point? What's the point in just making more art that tells us everything sucks? And if you're unhappy, you're going to be unhappy forever. Like, yeah, it's maybe like a little cathartic to feel that from watching it, but it doesn't do the world any good. So my hot take is, like, it annoys me a little bit that this is the type of art we get. Because I think it's so great, but why not make something uplifting with it? And it doesn't even take, like, you can show all this darkness, but just show us a hint. Like a hint of the light that can come from it.
Like when Tom and Shiv were driving away.
Yeah.
Maybe Kendall's body just lands on the hood of their car and, like, good, he got it. The bad guys paid. They paid for their sins. That's what you're saying? I did see some comments where they were like, what I'm hoping for in the finale is that all 3 of them jump from the top floor of the building.
Anybody who says anything like that, in the words of Logan Roy, F off. Like, that, it's just that's what you want to watch? Like, you want to watch people who you're like, these are bad people, even though, like, yeah, okay, they're obviously bad, but we can empathize with them. You just, like, want to watch bad people suffer. Like, that's super messed up if that's, like, enjoyable to you.
So these are some hot takes, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I'll pull up Silver Scale, who actually is saying what I was about to say. Some art is a cautionary tale. Tragedy sort of has this function. I'll let you respond. Let me just expand on that. Because if you watch something that leaves you feeling bad in the end, it does leave more of an impact. And I think, therefore, it has more of a chance of impacting you. Like, when I think back on Succession, it's going to leave me with this kind of bad feeling, but I'm going to associate that with all the negative traits of these characters. If I'm prioritizing money over values and morals, I am now going to associate that with the bad feeling I got from the show. That's what a cautionary tale does. I mean, I think it's hard to argue against the existence of tragedies for the last thousands of years. Like, that's got to say something. There's a vote of confidence there where there's a reason they've stood the test of time. And I think that's, if you were to whittle it down to its most simplistic, it's a morality tale, right? Where it tells you certain characters made mistakes, they did bad things, they paid for it. Learn from their mistakes. That's what you do in the real world all the time. You learn from your own mistakes, you can learn from other people's mistakes, or even better, nobody make the mistake. All the mistakes have been made in history. Let's repackage them into nice, digestible stories relevant to modern times and learn from the mistakes of all of human history. So nobody has to make them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, my gears are grinding right now. My cogs are grinding right now trying to think this through. I think maybe that's fair. Like, you can make a cautionary tale. I think that's totally valid. I guess the question is, like, art also makes you feel. Did this make you feel hopeful, though? Like, is it a cautionary tale that makes you feel like there's hope to avoid it? Like, I don't know. What effect did it have on you?
So it's funny because I think a lot of it is what you bring to the art. So I think that there is art out there which I think is bad. I actually think is bad for the world. Like, if there's music that is purely sad And it's not sad for a specific instance of like you went through a breakup and it was tough and here's some music that reflects that feeling, but sad that in a way that paints a picture that the world is malevolent and nothing's going to work out. To me, that is bad, and it can be abused. Like if you're someone who's unhappy, you can use certain movies and music to dig yourself.
Just watching like Requiem for a Dream and like these super depressing movies.
Sorry. At my worst, there was one day where I remember I listened to that song Funeral March, you know, bum bum
my
ba bum bum ba bum ba bum ba bum. I listened to it on repeat for 12 hours. And that was me abusing art and just digging myself deeper into whatever hole I was in at that point in my life. But if you take Succession, for example, I read it optimistically because I look at those happy moments that they had. And I say that moment in the kitchen where they're having a good time, the moment in the boat in season 1 where they're having a good time, those are so obtainable. Like you and I can obtain those moments. After this, we can go
get a J, hop on a boat.
That's right. Yeah, just have a good time. It's so I found the cautionary tale in this, which is that things ended badly for these characters. Okay, don't be like these characters.
Yeah. Well, I think to be fair, also, right? Like you're right. It's about what you bring to it. And what did I say? Right? Like when I watched the ending, I said I saw like a glimmer of hope for each of these characters, right? And so the show did not crush me with the bleakness and with the darkness. And so maybe that's fair. I mean, maybe this is a good cautionary tale. It's possible to watch it and be hopeful about life too. I mean, to me, I find it motivating in a way, right? It's like, it reminds me like, you know what? It's okay that I'm not a billionaire.
Right.
Like that's pretty nice.
Or here's the playbook to becoming a billionaire.
Yeah. Just kind of get rid of all the morals, relationships.
Well, it is when you watch shows like this with these anti-heroes, there's always a part of you that's like, if I could just have like 1% of what they have, just a little bit, I wouldn't go overboard. You know, I wouldn't get greedy, but like $1 million would be nice. When you watch There Will Be Blood, you're like, if I could have just like a little bit of his ruthlessness, but not all of it, you know?
I mean, there's something too. I mean, I loved Kendall's eulogy for Logan.
Yeah.
Right. That like, I forget the exact phrase, but something about just that unstoppable power that's like within Logan. Right. And Kendall says like he hopes he has just a little bit of it.
Yeah.
It's like anyone can look up. Like, yeah, Logan was a bad guy in a lot of ways, but there was something there. Right. Like there's something there that's like the heartbeat of capitalism. Right. That's something that's like, it's like the source of everything in the world. Right. Like there's something within him that built civilization.
Yeah. Accomplishing things in and of itself is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes accomplishing something comes with financial rewards.
But I guess, doesn't it seem a little strange that if a work of art, I think we both agree that a work of art in some way should inspire you to be hopeful, right? And to think that life can be good. Shouldn't it show that somewhere? Like, shouldn't we see one character who's like competent and good? Like, I don't know that we do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do think there is well, I guess not necessarily. I mean, I would say like we're getting into that question of what should art do. And to be clear, we're not saying can or can't. Like obviously when you're making art, like make whatever you want. When I say should, I'm saying what is good for you and good for the world. And I do think that certain art is bad for the person who made it and bad for the people who consume it. I was at a cafe the other day, or a restaurant the other day, and I noticed I'm not feeling good. Like I was happy before I walked in here. I was having a great day, and I'm not feeling.
Was it the music?
And then I noticed I'm like, they're playing Elliott Smith. I'm like, a guy that wrote all this very melancholy music, I believe took his own life by stabbing himself in the heart. And I am not saying his music falls into that category of like, you should never listen to it. But on that day, at that time, it was giving me feelings that had no business being there. I just wasn't feeling good. And I think some people are more receptive to it than others. Like what I'm describing now, some people might say, like, I can't even relate to that. Like you have full control over your feelings.
No. But like music very clearly just hijacks your feelings.
And I'm just trying to protect myself from the comments that I know are coming. What a baby. Go home and cry to mommy. I will cry to mommy because I'm well adjusted. And sometimes that's the right thing to do.
Gil, don't call me mommy in front of everybody.
Omar says, are Shakespearean tragedies not works of art? I would say they are works of art. Right?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Like, I'd have to revisit. Like, I mean, the last time I read any Shakespearean stuff was like in high school. Like,
Yeah.
did he? I don't know. Like, I wonder, how did a Shakespearean tragedy feel compared to Succession, or compared to like Requiem for a Dream? Like, I don't remember. But I was also younger then, right? Like, it was hard to understand. But I don't remember them feeling as gut wrenching and devastating as like Succession.
Yeah. By the way, Omar, Daniel is implying that Shakespearean tragedies aren't art, but I think he came off that a little.
Well,
because you made
yeah.
the statement that essentially art should be putting something positive into the world. And I made an argument against that. And I think you said your gears are turning or something.
Yeah, I'm
right?
I'm not saying what art is. I'm
We're-
saying what
we're
I think.
thinking out loud.
I'm saying what I think art should be, right?
Yeah.
Like, just the type of art that I want to exist in the world. I think I'm open-minded to this idea of having sort of artwork that is very bleak and miserable.
Yeah.
If it's sort of like a cautionary tale, and so long as it doesn't, like, I think there's a point where art can make the universe seem so miserable that it tells you there's no hope, right? Which, like, I think there is art that does that. I don't think that kind of art has a place in the world.
Yeah, malevolent universe.
Yes.
Things that make you think things cannot work out under any circumstances.
Which, the issue is that I think the philosophy of the creators of Succession fits that. Like, I think they think not only is character destiny, but that you have no control over your character. And to me, that's like malevolent universe. That's like, you have no control. Life's going to be miserable. Now, maybe that doesn't make itself into the art, right? Maybe because I think I watched Succession and I still felt hopeful at the end, right? But I don't know. It concerns me that that's the philosophy of the creators. And like, I don't know. Like, I don't like that that's what's, potentially being spread by it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what Omar says, got to show the bad so you can spot and appreciate the good. Yeah, and I think we agree with that.
Yeah,
I think this
totally.
is like my final statement on it, is that I do think that there's a ton of art like Succession that shows the bad, but shows it in a way that it's avoidable, or shows it in a way that, yes, you can appreciate the good. My problem is when art feeds into people's feelings that the universe and everything is against them and just makes them feel more hopeless. And I think sometimes people will do that to themselves. Like, I know when I was younger, I used to do that. I would watch a sad movie, and if it got to a point where things started to turn around for the character, I would shut it off. I was like, I only want things that feed into my preconceived notion. But if there's art that actually does that, I remember in the show Louis, he meets with like a movie executive, and they're like, do you have any ideas for a movie? And he's like, yeah, I've got one where this character is just like down on his luck. And like, he meets a girl and he falls in love with her. But then it turns out she's ripping him off and she steals all his money. Now he has nothing. And things just keep going wrong. And she kind of smiles and is like, okay, and like loses all interest and walks away. And that's kind of the satirical version of what I'm talking about. If you think that the universe is just purely bad and it's, inescapably evil, and you have no say over whether or not things work out for you in your life, if that's what your art says, I philosophically disagree with that. And I think consuming it might actually affect your mindset and affect your life in a negative way.
Yeah, and I want to respond to this comment about art therapy. I think it's interesting that Apolloc sent. I don't know if you want to throw that up there.
Here you
Just
go.
like 4 messages. So I think it's a really interesting question. So art therapy is justified. Why can the artist use medium for catharsis? So I'm sure there's like I don't know about, like, I think there's psychological research around this stuff, right? Like, there's got to be something to expressing your pain, right? Like, if you're feeling something really painful, I think there's got to be something to like expressing that through art. But I would say like the next level that would make a great artist would be an artist who, in the struggle to create art to express how they're feeling, can overcome the darkness, or like an artist who can then figure out, where is the light here? Like, what's the good thing about this? How can they still find like love and happiness and light in the universe? I think that would be the great artist.
Yeah. The tough thing is we're not giving any examples, and I don't want to because I haven't thought this through.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give one and someone pokes holes in it, because I would not say that Succession fits what we're describing. Like, I don't think I like the show Succession, obviously, and it's not something where I would say, don't watch Succession, it's bad for you. So that doesn't fit this example.
Yeah, it really isn't, because Succession is not as just like overwhelmingly just oppressively painful as other things, right? Like, I don't know, like Succession, I kind of trusted the creators, like, in a way. Like, I felt like they weren't unnecessarily torturing us.
Right.
Right. I don't know. Like, I think this is an interesting topic. Like, I want to think about this a lot more.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I may not agree with everything I've said here. I'm not sure. Like, I got to think about this some
Hey,
more.
that's one take. We have conversations here off the cuff.
Yeah.
We're not coming at you with pre-scripted ideas that are tailor-made to appeal to a broad audience.
And this is one take after dark, you know?
That's right. Come to us Friday morning on our weekly live
When
stream.
we're on coffee and
That's where we've thought everything through.
Yeah.
But maybe I disagree with everything I just said. It's possible.
could be.
Silver Scale says it's great points being made, though.
Thank
That's a
you.
good point. We have to we'll go back and sift through this and repackage it. There
Yeah.
actually, I remember like 3 years ago, I was thinking through a video that would have been called "What's the Point of Sad Endings?" Because on the surface, they make you feel bad. Why make art that leaves you feeling bad? And it was a lot of the stuff we're talking about here. It's a cautionary tale. Some people might say life lessons don't have to come from art. Like maybe you're thinking about it too much. It's a lot of interesting ideas. For a quick question that should take about 5 seconds to address, why are violent video games so popular? I'll quote Quentin Tarantino, because it's fun. He was on a news, I forget what channel, like CNN or one of those news channels, and he was arguing with an activist who was very against violence in movies. And she was like, well, why do you show, buckets of blood being spilled in your movies? And Tarantino was like, because it's fun, Jan. And she was like, well, I'd like one of these fans of Kill Bill, to meet you on the street, and then you could see how fun it is. So anyway, yeah, it's a longer conversation for another time. Daniel loves Call of Duty, so hypocrite after everything he
I'm
just
like
said.
a huge Call of Duty
Loves
guy.
shooting people in the virtual world.
I prefer Zelda where you kill monsters, then it's okay.
Circling back, monsters are animals.
No,
Guardians of
they're
the Galaxy
not. They're
3,
not animals.
Hypocrisy.
They're not animals.
All right, circling back to Succession, Daniel. Any final thoughts on Succession?
No, I think it was an incredible show. Like, I think extremely well done. I think they crushed it, right? Like, and I think they stuck the landing. I think it was awesome. I think the acting was incredible. The writing was amazing. Whatever the other jobs are, the directing was great. The camera work was great.
Cinematography. Gaffer.
Actually, I did see. I saw like a really cool YouTube video about like the cinematography of Succession, because it's sort of like mockumentary style, but still really cinematic. It was very cool.
It's just confusing to me. You're like, I saw this YouTube video.
There are no other YouTube channels.
I don't remember making that video. So where did he see this?
But yeah, I mean, I think it was an amazing show. It was weird. Like, as I watched it, there was something about it. I kept kind of losing interest in the show. And I don't really know why, but now, like, watching the final season, I was like, this is like, it's really good. Like, it is such a good show.
Yeah, I think it had, let's go back to some of those super chats. First off, let's address the rest of Dylan's comment where, about hot takes. Would you say overall this was your favorite season? Going back and watching season 1, it wasn't as gripping as I remember. I definitely remember season 1 taking me a little bit of time to get totally hooked. I remember liking the first episode, but I didn't have that urgent need to see the next one. That probably didn't start until I think about halfway through the first season. It's hard for me to pick a favorite season overall. I binge watched seasons 1 through 3 fairly recently, a few months ago. So it feels like and this is a compliment to the show, it feels like a pretty coherent whole to me. When I go from one season to the next, I don't really notice a change in quality. It just felt like a continuation of the story. It's with Better Call Saul, and this is probably just because we were so hyper analyzing the show, I remember specific episodes. With Succession, I don't really. It just feels like this one big story. But I have heard other people say the same thing. Listening to some other Succession podcasts, people who have been hyperanalyzing the show, they mentioned how, in general, they have favorite moments. They don't necessarily have favorite episodes. And I think that's because of how coherent it felt. So honestly, I think by default, maybe season 1 isn't my favorite, just because of the fact that it took me some time to get into it. And by the time I got to 2 and 3 and 4, I was already into the show. So if you were to just measure how much did I enjoy it, it's probably more for the other seasons. From the blank look on your face, seems like you don't have anything to add to that.
No, I don't. I got to get going in like a minute, but
Okay.
I think Yeah, I gotta rewatch the other. Like, I kind of want to rewatch the old seasons now, knowing sort of how it all unfolded.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you have to go, you can go ahead.
You're gonna take some more time?
Yeah, I'll
And
do
you
one
go
or
through
two.
these
I'll do.
messages?
I want to make sure we get through all the super chats, and then I'll do the wrap up. But I think you've given your closing thoughts.
All right, fair enough. I'll be around, for a bit if you got other, you want to yell something to me.
Sure. Get out of here.
All right, nice. I think this was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone I think we got a lot of like fun messages and stuff. So thank you everybody. Please, if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe.
Yeah.
And please drop a like, comment.
Fridays, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're doing live streams every week. Usually we're talking about just various news and TV and movie news stories of the week.
But always interesting stuff. Sometimes we veer into conversations about broad topics like what art should be. And if you disagreed with anything I had to say, you're dead to me.
There you go. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Silver Scale, thank you for the super chat. The park wandering was mirroring Logan's lonely park walk before he died with just the bodyguard behind him. That's true. And I think they're both in similar places for different reasons. I think Logan was feeling like he doesn't have a connection with all of his children. And I think there's no question that although there was complexity in their relationships, he did genuinely love them. But clearly he was not feeling great about where things were. I think that's what led to his whole economic units monologue. He was trying to justify to himself, it doesn't matter that I don't have fulfilling relationships. People aren't people. They're just economic units. And for Kendall, he had to go on the park walk because he lost everything that mattered to him. Just like Daniel. That's why he's going to walk around by himself in the dark. Another one from Silver Scale. Thank you. Don't want to keep you guys, but comedy and tragedy were two of the Greek muses. Thalia or Talia, I'm not sure, and Melpomene. I wish Daniel actually, he knows this stuff. Like he would know how to pronounce these. Those were the names. Yeah, I think I need to, I would love to spend some time going back and, I mean, obviously I learned about this stuff in school, but now that I've developed a hobby that's become a profession of overanalyzing stories and art, it would be great to revisit this stuff and learn where everything came from. Because a lot of these debates we're having, should art make you feel sad? It's probably been discussed literally 10 million times. Like, why do we have to recreate the wheel? Let's just look up the answer. And this, Thalia or Talia person probably has the answer. Okay, so I think let's wrap it up there. Dylan S., thank you for your comment here. It says, you dudes are awesome. Thanks for your take. Thank you for participating. Omar, Daniel, cook up Gil a shake fit for a king. We used to do that actually back in the day. I remember. So that actually hit close to home because it felt when we were hanging out at weddings, bat mitzvahs, and as kids we're at the table and just trying to amuse ourselves, we would just pour a bunch of random stuff into a cup. A bunch of salt and pepper, Coke, saliva, whatever you can get your hands on, and somebody would drink it. So it felt very real. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So thank you, everybody. Like I said, here are the pitches, the things. This is my soft pitch. I'm like Tom talking to Skarsgård. Live streams every Friday morning, 10 or 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Talk about, sometimes it'll be a deep dive into a movie. Last week we were talking about Into the Spider-Verse. Sometimes it'll be a variety of topics. It's just chill, hanging out, bring up whatever you want in the chat. Ugh, I hate looking with my face eggs. I don't like eyeballs. Okay, you just want to listen? I get it. We're also on every podcast app. Just search OneTake and you can listen to us in your ears. Other than that, I think that covers it. So thank you, everyone. And I will see you all Friday. Oh, also, Across the Spider-Verse coming out this Friday. So we'll be doing a deep dive for that movie as well, I think.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody. And
see you on the next One Take. That was the smoothest conclusion we ever had. We did it. And now
are we still live?
Yeah, we are. Okay, let's cut it there. It's perfect.